transcription for help content. I think maybe if you unpack that question a little more, we might be able to answer it. But transcription is typically used for video, which we can support, which we do support, and there are different ways to translate that. It's also worth noting that in these mobile apps, there are oftentimes a lot of pieces of content that are placeholders. So in this example, my name would be a placeholder, something that you don't have to translate. The location may be something that you translate, but then it's going to be swapped in based on where you are in the world. And there are a lot of different things that would be considered placeholders. And I don't know, Valerie, if you have anything more that you wanted to add to this.
Not about the placeholder, but I wanted to answer the question that I see in the chat. Transcreation can have two forms. We call the short form at Smartling, we call it transcreation. That would be taglines, slogans, really the short sentence that you want to be highly, highly creative. And then there's the long form transcreation, which would be what we call creative translation, where the translator can take some creative liberties and can stray away from the source to really make sure that the translation resonates with their local audience, but is still reserved for long paragraphs and longer text. So does help content is long form transcreation appropriate for help content? Probably not, because this is more dry type content, and you don't really need to be that creative for this. It's actually probably more technical, and you would want to be faithful to the source.
Right, and that's just acknowledging a comment or question that was in the chat. So thanks, Valerie, for addressing that. All of this is super important. My slide's taking a second to load here, so give me a second. Yeah, I'll go back. All of this is important because the way we used to do pretty much everything is so far in the past. And what I mean by that is the future, which is really like the present future of the way that we engage with products and services, is digital. And content is powering digital experiences in all walks of life. If you want to get to the airport, if you want to order a Shake Shack burger, if you want to do some online shopping or book a table at a restaurant, the entire process, the entire product experience is actually driven by content. So the way that we think about the words we use and the translations that we select for end users, no matter where they are in the world, is really important. And we have different levels of translation quality that we would apply to different types of content. And Valerie, maybe you could walk us through how your team thinks about this when it comes to managing our customers' content.
Sure. So really, not all content is created equal, right? So you're going to want to look at the type of content you're dealing with, what visibility that content has. Is it something that was really creative in English to begin with? Or is it more internal facing, very, very short life shelf, which probably does not require the same effort and investment. So it's all about the trade-off between high quality, speed, and cost. If you have content that you don't deem as valuable, you're probably not going to want to invest as much money, and you're going to want it to be really fast generated, in very, very fast. So that might be a good candidate for machine translation. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have the highly creative, very collaborative content that needs your linguist to be very, very engaged with your creative team and have a collaboration that takes time, that produces very, very high value, but will also cost more money.
So I particularly love this matrix, Valerie, because we're talking about two different things that are important, which is the speed to market. Actually, it's three, right? It's the speed to market, the cost of the translations, and the quality. And recently you and I were talking about, and we decided to change our terminology around the quality metric to be variable and guaranteed, or closer to guaranteed, right? Where if you're using machine translation, you're going to get a result, but the result is going to be inconsistent. In many cases, it may be completely unusable, but we all know machine translation is becoming more important. But today, we're talking about transcreation, and transcreation you have to get right 100% of the time. Like, this is a high value content, so it's super, super important.
So machine translation has made a lot of progress, but it remains very mechanical, very, very, very close to the source. And for a lot of content which needs to be more idiomatic and it needs to read like really in target language copy. This is not the right solution. You really need to have the human translator coming in and creating those types of translations.
So if you haven't seen it already, the Smartling is a company that has both technology to automate the process of translation, but we also have a translation service. We're a full service translation provider. And last year we came out with a book. Here it is. It's called Move the World with Words. Can't really see it with my virtual background. But it features the lives of 12 Smartling translators who live around the world. 2 of them are on the call today, Daniel and Gabby. And the book is all about the people behind global commerce. And we feel it's really important that when you're going to translate content, and especially when you're going to transcreate content, that you actually know the person who you're working with. You know the source content writer, why not know the target content writer? We've got a great story about all of our translators. You can learn more about it at smartling.com/translators, but you're actually going to hear from them today, which is pretty cool. And Valerie, can you just briefly unpack the depth and breadth of the services that we offer for those who may be unaware of our services?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do cover the full array of services, from general translation, which includes usually our default workflow is translation plus editing, where you have 2 translators working on the content. Transcreation, which we just described, but we can also do transcription, subtitle, translation, desktop publishing for after translation has been completed, and making sure your end documents are fully laid out properly in their localized version. We can support SEO work, quality assurance, and we do offer linguistic asset management. By this, I mean glossary creation, style guide creation, or maintenance, review your assets and offer recommendations for making them more solid, and making sure that they are live documents.
Yes, and your team is amazing. I love working with each of you. And we've had a couple of translation projects ourselves, so I've got to experience it, and it's fantastic. And the other value add that we offer is that a lot of companies, we see they have different translation vendors for different types of content or different divisions in the business. The cool thing about Smartling is that you can connect all of your content types to our platform, and then our language services is expertise to write marketing copy, help center copy, domain specific copy like medical content or legal content. We have a full service and complete suite of offerings, so that you can really come to us, have a single invoice at the end of the month, a single person to speak to throughout the month to get your translations done. So if you didn't know that, wanted to share that with you. But the real crux of today's experience is a transcreation workshop. We can show you slides about transcreation. We can talk about what it is and all of that. But what we actually wanted to do today is engage you in a transcreation project. We wanted to show you what it looks like behind the scenes, so that you can see how translators actually approach these projects. So I'm going to turn it over to Anya to talk a little bit about what makes a successful transcreation project.
Thank you, Adrienne. Well, as kind of Valerie has already kind of touched upon, transcreation sort of almost sits somewhere halfway between translation and copywriting. So if you see that, it's sort of a sweet spot in the middle where you take an existing concept, a creative concept, and you transpose it into another language, taking into consideration another culture as well. And everything really starts with a good creative brief. And just like Adrienne said earlier, you know your creatives. Why wouldn't you know your translators? The same goes for the actual brief. So whatever brief you gave to your creative team to come up with the original kind of ad or the snappy slogan, all that information should also go to the translators to give them the context that they need to create something equally as creative in their language. So that type of context is, you know, what are you trying to achieve with the overall campaign? Where will the translation sit? Will they be on a poster outdoors? Will they be on a little banner ad? Will they be on a product packaging? And with that, how much space have we got to work with? Is it going to be super tight and super small, and or can we take more liberty and be kind of have larger bodies of text there? And then kind of providing also the visual context that goes with that. So any kind of imagery that's going to go with the translations is really important to share that with the translators, but also get their feedback, because maybe some imagery might not be culturally appropriate in the target language. So if you can have that open dialogue and have that kind of trust in your team, then you can kind of have these kind of feedback loops in a much more collaborative and open and transparent way.
Yeah, I love that we're speaking about this creative brief. And just to come back to the book one more time, which I know it's hard to see with the virtual background, on the back, we actually transcreated the words, move the world with words. And what made that easy is that I called upon the people who were featured in the book to write the transcreation. So they had more than a creative brief. They were actually the brief, which made it easier, but we still had a bunch of options. And I also wanted to call out this visual context is absolutely essential. And if you stay to the very end of this webinar, my colleague Sophia is going to show you a little bit of a preview of a product that we are working on to make transcreation easier in Smartling. So stay tuned for that. Anya, we talked a little bit about the importance of communication. I think maybe Valerie, you might be able to add something here as well. I'd love to get both of you to talk a little bit about like how important is it to have a feedback loop with your translation team in a transcreation project.
Sure, I can start. So I think the main thing is that the same way that in a creative team that creates the original concept, it's never just, hey, here's your brief. And then 2 days later, exactly at 5 p.m. when you need it, you have the perfect creative concept in your inbox. It is very much an iterative process for the original concept. And we should treat transcreation in the same way, even though it might mean for the customer that it's a little bit more involvement, but actually it will lead to a better translation outcome when you can sort of feedback and say, I like this, maybe this is too far away from the concept, or well, actually you stuck too close to the concept, we like to see you take this a little bit further. And when you can kind of have these open conversations, I think it leads to better work in the end.
Absolutely, and to facilitate that, the first thing we do is we introduce the translators to our customers, and they have full access to them so that there's a real dialogue possible. They can have that conversation within our platform. We have a feature that allows the translators to send some queries to the customer. They can correspond via email, or even we create Slack channels for the customer to be in direct contact with the linguists.
And today, there's a Zoom call with the translators, so we can actually do even more than just communicate via text. This is like an amazing benefit of having powerful technology and an integrated services program, so that the entire process around translation is automated, but when it comes to the words, you know who you're working with to get the job done. And it's important to give positive feedback early and often. It's important to give constructive feedback early and often. Otherwise, your teams who you depend on to deliver this international experience, you know, they're going to be operating without feedback. So they're going to assume the best, or maybe they'll assume the worst. I don't know. It depends, I guess, on the translator. But you know, they want to do, I know this for sure, they want to deliver great work for you. They want to deliver great work for their clients. And the best way to know if they're delivering great work is to have communication. Gabby and Daniel, we're gonna loop you into this in just a minute, because we're gonna see what that communication can look like. So, Anya, you're gonna walk us through. Yes, Valerie, go for it.
If I may, I wanted to add just one point. Translation quality is all about preferences, right? So that dialogue is important early and often, because our linguists want to know what the customer's preferences are and what their expectations are. We might deliver the most beautiful translation, but if it does not match what the customer was looking for, then we did not succeed. So that dialogue is really, really essential to the process.
Totally. Valerie, we also got a question in the chat that I'd love to get your opinion on. Enarud, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, asked, how often can the content change during the process of transcreation? As
often as it needs. You know, it's important to iterate on the translation until the customer has the version that they like and they feel is going to be the most impactful.
A few weeks ago, Smartling put out a statement that said, "Together against racism." And we actually transcreated that phrase, but that was not the original source content that I had submitted to a handful of translators for feedback and for transcreation. Actually, what happened was I gave them another source string. They gave me the back translation, "Together against racism," and I thought it was better. So we actually changed the source content through the transcreation process, which goes to show you how valuable this process can be. All right, so now, Anya, let's unpack a workshop here. I'm gonna hand it over to you, and I'm really looking forward to participate myself.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we put together this transcreation exercise for all of you to take part in today, just to give you a little bit of a feel of how the process works and to sort of help you put yourself in the shoes of the translators if you are a marketing manager or a localization manager who works with the translators on transcreation projects. So you might want to grab yourself a pen and paper, but we'll also encourage you to put your ideas in the chat in a little bit. So we've come up with a fictitious client for you. It's the renowned Natural History Museum in London. It's a beautiful big building which holds tons of exciting stuff. And we're going to assume that the Natural History Museum got in touch with us because they want to engage more with their overseas visitors. So at the moment, the museum creates a series of really quirky ads that they display outside of the museum, as well as all around London on the tubes, on the tube station, bus stations, things like that. And they're big posters with a striking image, and then there is a quirky slogan underneath. And we'll show you in a moment what that slogan is, and you will actually have a go at transcreating it. So the customer wants us to produce a similar ad in another language, and they want to use the same image that you will see as in the English ad, but they want us to come up with something in other languages. So for the purpose of this exercise, it will be your mother tongue. And if your mother tongue is English, we'll try and come up with a similar quirky slogan in English. They know that it's probably not possible to do a literal translation of the slogans that they have. So they want us to take creative liberties and come up with something that is just as punchy and just as creative in another language. So the only framework that we have is that whatever slogan we come up with, it has to tie in with the image that you see on the poster. And you have to think about a little bit about the length of your slogan in the other language. It needs to roughly fit in on that poster. So you can maybe go 50% longer in terms of characters than the original, but it can't be super long because otherwise the font size will go so small that you can't read it from afar anymore. And just generally,
so Anya, this is the creative brief, right? This is like an ideal package. Yeah.
That's right. So all we need to know is, for the purpose of this brief, is that the overarching message, the objective of the campaign is that we want to pique the reader's interest. We want them to come to the museum. So we're happy to have a little, that's funny, or what did I mean? Kind of, those little moments that make you just stop and read it again and find out more and get people interested in the museum. So that is the brief. So if you want to move on to the slides, then I'll talk through the actual ad when we have it in front of us. That's your slide, Adrian.
Yes, okay, I'll handle this. All right, so we want you guys to participate, and we think we're gonna have a little bit of fun here. So for whomever writes the most creative English transcreation or alternative English headline for this exercise, we'll win a $100 gift card. Anya is gonna make the selection, so put them into the group chat as you come up with them. You're gonna have about 10 minutes to think about it while we go through the transcreations in Spanish and German. So, okay, Anya, back to you.
Fabulous. Okay, so here we go. In the next slide, you'll see the actual poster that we're going to transcreate, and we're just going to focus on the top slogan. So it's "Well, hello there." And what you can see in the top half, the image is a skeleton of a blue whale that's hanging in the big reception hall at the museum. And so they use the little technique here from the English phrase, "Well, hello there," and use the similarly sounding word whale to kind of come up with this creative pun. And so as we kind of head into this exercise, you might want to think about all the different possible techniques you can use to come up with quirky puns in English or in another language. So it could be a play on words like we have here, where they use similar sounding words to create a new meaning. You can draw on literary techniques, for example, an alliteration where you repeat sounds. So maybe a wonderful world of whales. So you have the word sound that repeats and might create a new slogan. And you can use things like repetition, comparisons, similes, maybe bring in a question or any kind of quirky cultural references that you think could relate back to the brief. And just to kind of, think about it, you might, in your language or in another language, you might not want to use the word whale. It might not work in your language, but you could bring in maybe the fact that it's a blue whale and play on the fact that it's, on the color blue, and you might bring in an expression to do with blue in your language that could tie back into the whale. Or you could work with maybe the more scientific names. So you have the whale, this whale is a Belian whale, or I'm hoping I'm saying this right, a cetacean. So you have different synonyms of the word whale that you might be able to play around with. So basically now it's over to you. So those of you who speak another language other than English, we'd love you to kind of just have a think about it, play around with some ideas. And when you come up with something, put it in the chat. And then it would be super helpful if you put in what it actually is in English, so literally, and then try and explain how that works in your language. And you'll see as we go through the examples for Spanish and German, when you look at the literal back translations, it's like, what is this? Like, how does this even make sense? But so you need to give us the rationale as well. And for those of you who are English native speakers, we'd love you to come up with just some other examples in English that might work well with this campaign. So think about maybe the techniques that you're using. So are you using a metaphor, or are you using a play on sounds, play on words? And then pop it in the chat and kind of explain a little bit how it works in that language. Make sense?
I love it. And we're seeing some good responses already. So let's see how Daniel did. Anya, keep on going. You're doing great.
Well, I was wondering if you've got Daniel's slide up, if maybe Daniel wanted to talk us through his ideas for Spanish, the back translation, and then sort of talk a little bit about the rationale behind it.
Yeah, brilliant. So I was trying to think of different strategies while thinking of a transcreation. So for the first one, Chao Pescado, I did a closer one to the original. So the original, especially on that photo we have there, it looks like it's a poster maybe on the underground.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a greeting to get the attention of someone passing by. So I chose a greeting which is quite fun in Spanish. Literally means buy fish. So instead of hello, I used goodbye, like you passerby, using the word fish, which ties in with the whale.
Nice, and it's an alliteration as well, right? If you say it in Spanish.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Chao Pescado sounds quite like a rhyme, and it's quite popular among people. It's a bit like see you later, alligator. It's,
nice.
Many people say it in the same way. And then for the second one, I chose to focus not so much in the animal, but on the size, because on that photo you can see it's a very big animal, a really big fossil. So I chose an expression which literally means have a big time, which means enjoy yourself, have a good time. Funnily enough, when I was doing the back translation, I thought, okay, I can do a back transcreation and say have a whale of a time. That's not the literal translation, but it's the meaning.
That's like doubly impressive.
And then I thought, okay, we are lucky enough here that we have space underneath as well. So it's not just the poster and the short sentence at the top. So we can always explain things a little bit further, which we can't always do, but in this case we can. So with this one, Pásalo en Grande, we can tie in with how good a museum it is. You'll enjoy in this museum and tie it in this way. And the next one, we come back to the fish image, and I used an expression which is quite popular as well, como pez en el agua. You have a similar one in English, like a fish in water. And I was thinking of the text that goes underneath because it explains a little bit what you can find there. And the Natural History Museum always focuses on the vast and very interesting collection that they have. So I thought this deviates a bit more from the original, but I thought it could be used a bit like como pez en el agua, like a fish in water. It can be applied to the image that we see. So the whale fits in very well within the big collection, the very interesting collection, but also the visitors will feel like a fish in water because it's such a great museum for them where they can enjoy. So I thought we could explain this a little bit in the space underneath and tie it in with the image.
Fabulous. And I guess you come up with a really good point here that also, we'll probably have to transcreate the long form transcreation, the sentence underneath it to tie it in with the big slogan at the top to make it, really localized and feel really intuitive to a Spanish reader there. Great examples.
Thank you.
Are you getting a lot of love in the chat there, Daniel? People are loving your examples.
I haven't seen it yet.
What I love about this, right, is it's a point that Valerie made very appropriately a few minutes ago, which is that at the end of the day, it comes down to your preference. So let's say you all are the client, right? Everyone's now the client. Put your client hat on. A, B, or C. What is your preference? Which would you use? You can hold up a piece of paper if you want and show us on the screen, or throw into the chat which transcreation would you choose? And I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I'm going to go with A. It looks like a lot of people love A. Got a couple in C and B. But isn't this crazy, guys, right? we have 65 people on the call, and we have 3 options. And there's no, I mean, maybe A is like the winner here because it's getting chosen the most, but there's no like clear winner, which goes to show the client's input, the customer's input is essential, because they will probably have, you have a understanding of the brands that the translator will not have. And you're going to have a preference as to what the message is that you put out there. And this is the process that it takes to find the right fit. And because this is an ad that's on the tube, that's going to be seen by thousands of people every single day, you can't get this one wrong. Same is true if it's on your mobile app, if it's on your website, wherever it lives. This is really important stuff. Now, Anya, I thought we'd now transition over to Gabby, who also translates into Spanish, but it's for a different region. And this is an important point, because earlier in the chat, someone had brought up like, well, how do you approach transcreation for a language specific website or a regional specific website? I think this is going to just illustrate some of the differences, and we can speak to that.
Okay, thank you. So, well, I did something very similar to what Daniel did, and we did not communicate at all in this process, so I'm really impressed. But, well, first I searched, and I can show you my old-fashioned paper. I did like a research about the whale, how it got there. I saw a lot of videos of, it actually got a time capsule in it. They found newspapers in between the bones, and it's called Hope. So I tried to translate the name and play with the words, and also of what it means. So I came with 3 different solutions. The first one is like more focused on the same effect in what the original did with the words, like using alliteration and repetition of vowels, and splitting the word. And also we have, in Spanish, we have 2 words, two different ballena with B. It's the animal, and then I played with ballenándose. It's like 2 different words, but we got the same effect. And then in the second one, this is a very popular also way of, in Latin America, when the bus, for example, is getting crowded and you have to like move backwards so more people may come in. So I thought this is a welcoming visitors to get into the museum, to come in. So the whale is actually inviting them to get into the museum. And then in the second one, I thought I could replicate what the source does with hello. And it's also a pun on words, because hola without an H, it's a wave. It's a sea wave. So I did a little trick there, like playing with homonyms, we call them. 2 words that we spell differently and have different meanings, but can have the same effect. And then in the third one, if we were being more local than usual, not Latin America, but for Argentina, we call ballenera, which is a whale fishing boat. It's also a T-shirt, the fishnet T-shirt. We call it ballenera. So I thought of like this is a great mammal, the huge mammal, the greatest, the largest. So I thought, well, I'm being rather menacing, or I thought I could give it a little twist on that. So I'm playing with the word and the T-shirt. So like using the size of the animal, like Daniel did. So well, that was my share. I don't know
I love the number C, the play around with the fishnet T-shirt and applying it back to the whale. I think that's really inspired. That's amazing.
So
Love it.
Daniel, how does that feel for you? Sort of looking at it from the Spanish perspective, would the number C make sense for you in Spain too, or is it very specific to Argentina?
It is quite specific, yeah, because we don't call the t-shirts that way, so the pun wouldn't work in there.
Yeah.
So that goes to show how different it can be, just Spanish from Spain and from Argentina in this case, or any other countries. Sometimes brands who want to properly localize and make everything feel very, very local need to go down to the country for it to feel 100% natural. So great work. I love the three options there.
Fabulous. Well, shall we have a little vote as well and see for Gabriella's A, B, or C?
Let's do it. Cast my vote. And while the votes are coming in, I just wanted to reinforce this question around language-oriented websites or region-oriented websites, and how does it work with transcreation? I think what you're seeing here is that if you're going to be transcreating content, you're probably going to want to have a regional-oriented website, not just a language-oriented website. Content is too important today to service up Spanish to all Spanish-speaking users worldwide. It's not going to work. There are different nuances to these languages in different parts of the world, and there are really easy ways to support multiple languages. If you're using Smartling, we make it possible to scale your digital infrastructure into multiple locales. So if you're curious about how that works, let us know in the chat. We'll follow up with you later. But it looks like, again, we're not all, it's not unanimous. We don't all have one selection. This reinforces the point that the customer's input in the transcreation process is essential. Everyone here has a slightly different opinion and point of view on what the right transcreation would be. It's not that any of these are wrong. And I think that's also important, because a lot of the time we hear customers are, a colleague who speaks Spanish walked down the hall and said, this Spanish is not correct, we have to change it. But maybe what they really mean is it's not their preferred translation or transcreation. So understanding why you make specific choices when it comes to translation is important. Being able to communicate that to your colleagues is important. And there's a lot of hard work. We're seeing a lot of hard work and thought goes into this process. Anya, your turn. Let's talk about German. What did you come up with?
Alrighty. So the first option I went for is Erlebe dein blaues Wunder. And literally translated, it means experience your blue miracle. But what you have to understand is actually to experience a blue miracle is a German expression, which actually means to have a big, bad surprise. But because we're kind of trying to take a different connotation here, because it's a blue whale, so we're taking the color blue. So all of a sudden, the blue miracle, actually, it has a positive connotation. So when we say experience your blue miracle, it's actually talking about the whale. So we're taking an expression here and turning it on its head and basically changing its meaning to refer to the blue whale. The second one is Die Qual der Wahl, which literally translated is spoiled for whale, which sounds really odd. But we have a German expression that is Die Qual der Wahl, which means to have the agony of choice, which in English, I guess we have the expression to be spoiled for choice. But interestingly, the word choice in German is spelled W-A-H-L, and the German word for whale is W-A-L. So I've just taken out the H there out of the last word, and all of a sudden it goes like, to be spoiled for choice, but it refers back to the whale. So it gives you that sense of, if you go there, there's lots to explore in the museum. And then in the last option C, warte nicht länger auf einen Besuch, don't wail any longer to visit. So a warte or a Wartenwahl is a Boolean wail. So there it's supposed to say warte nicht länger. So I've taken out the first sound and go from wait to wail to kind of create that little play on words there.
Amazing, amazing. Okay. So let's go to the customers now. Everyone cast your vote. Which would you choose if you were the Natural History Museum to get German speaking users, people to the museum? B's and C's is what we're seeing, Anya.
Interesting.
So Anya, I'm going to ask a question of the audience as well, and do not take this personally. This is just to get some user input here. Is there an option here that you would absolutely not select? Is there one that you reject right off the bat? A, B, or C? Let's see what people have to say. Is there one that you guys think here is just not good at all? And no worries, we're not going to take it personally. This is part of the process, right? We need the feedback.
Mark's already told me C is too long. He's right. Very good, Mark.
Oh, you're busted. Busted, Anya. Okay,
I love
so
the fact
maybe
I love the fact Mark took the time to really figure out the exact character length, including spaces. Good job.
I love that. Okay, so I'm going to ask somebody who's selected one, you know, or maybe everyone can respond, but why have you rejected a particular option here? What is the reason? It could just be 3 words, you know, doesn't sound right, doesn't sit well with me, whatever it is, too adventurous. Is there a specific thing that you are feeling or responding to here that's caused you to say, you know what, this one's not going to work for me?
I think, Adrian, it's such an important question to ask, really, because not only, obviously, there is going to be different connotations for different people, but also the back translation often sounds awful. Like, unless you have the rationale afterwards, it can be like, whoa, that's so off-putting. I would definitely not want to have that association. So that's a really good question to ask. And I think also something that as a customer ordering transcreations, you have to kind of be aware of that a literal translation can sound really odd to your ears.
Yeah. And it you know, the opinion of the customer may just be an opinion, but guess what? Your opinion matters. It's your content. So share it with us. Josh has shared that A, wouldn't want to associate the museum with a bad surprise. Like that's how do you feel about that feedback, Anya? Like, what do you get it right away? Are you curious? How does that sit with you?
I mean, we receive feedback all the time. So, you know, I'm well versed in receiving it and validating it these days. But I particularly love Marta's response that C seems to associate less with the image. And that's an interesting one because we kind of took liberties here to go to a Bartenwahl, which is obviously quite a scientific term. So you might know whale, you might know blue whale, but Bartenwahl is quite a specific term. So it might actually be too far away. People might not get it quick enough. So I think that's a really good feedback. And then also Clisri, I'm hoping I'm saying that's right. She said that there's no call to action there in the option B. So that's again a really interesting bit of feedback there.
And if we flip it, right, now let's go back to the positive. You all selected A, B, and C before for the affirmative. Why did you choose A, B, or C for the affirmative? Like, I chose B just because I thought it was unique and I liked the explanation that you offered for it. It sounded adventurous to me, even though, like you said, the back translation is very strange. But like, why did you all say, I want B or I want C? Let's give Anya some positive feedback here so we can see what positive feedback looks like in the transcreation process. And as we do this, Anya, why don't you pull through the chat and find your favorite transcreation, because it's getting time to announce a winner here.
All right, I'm on it.
And while you're doing that, and while some people are offering some feedback, what I think is particularly cool about transcreation and content is that it oftentimes doesn't live on its own. Here we go. Creative content typically lives within campaigns. You're not just going to have one message, you're going to have multiple messages. Here's an example of another ad that's in the tube, same campaign. I was before you. Like, this is clearly a very creatively written ad. They work in tandem. So when you go to translate this stuff, when you go to transcreate this stuff, work with the same translator so that you can have a consistent message from the left ad to the right ad. Because at the end of the day, if these two ads read totally differently, that experience that Anya had when she found these ads wouldn't have been what it was today. We wouldn't be talking about this. We'd be talking about something else. So I think that's really important. We're seeing some positive feedback here. You know, A, the irony in putting the experience in the focus, awesome. B, because not everyone understands the expression intended. C, might be too niche, as it might not be the most well-known term. That may have been from a little bit earlier, but this is really cool. I want to quickly say thank you to you, Anya, Daniel, and Gabby for sharing with us your ideas for the transcreations here. This was awesome. Anya, who's the winner? Who came up with the best transcreation?
This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. There is some really, really great transcreations going on here. So I'm gonna just, okay. So there's a really, really nice one here from Mark.
1 second here.
From Mark, who went with the French. Let me just see if I can find it again. It was the French transcreation. Let me see. So, Madeleine, ici notre baleine. So you see there's a rhyme in there. And the back translation is Madeleine, here's our whale. And he says Madeleine is a popular name in literature and it rhymes with baleine, the French word for whale. So he's giving the name, he's giving the whale a name to create a rhyme for the ad. So I think for me, that's sort of the winner. Well done, Mark.
Well done, Mark. Congratulations. Katie, who is also an all-star copywriter, is going to connect with you, and you will be the recipient of a $100 gift card. We'll figure out where it's from. But well done, and thanks to everybody for your great ideas here. Sophia, welcome to the call. You are on the product team at Smartling, and I know that Franny is also here. She's a UX designer at Smartling. You all are both working on some new software to enable the transcreation process. Sophia, I'd love to hear a little bit more about this. What is the product? When is it expected to be delivered? And what should everybody know about this new transcreation tool that you're working on with Franny?
Yeah, so this is actually really great timing, Adrian. So we just happen to also be working on a transcreation tool within the Smartling platform. And the way this would work is it would integrate into your workflow. So it would be a separate transcreation step that you can add. And you can dynamically route content here like you would a normal workflow step. And then when the translators go into the platform, they see a transcreation job. They click on it. This is what they're led to. And then you can see kind of in the screenshot, we have the visual context here that makes everybody love Smartling, but we also have kind of what we did in the workshop where we present 3 different options. We present the back translation, and then actually the translators can select their preferred option. We can also add review steps down the line for the customer to then select their preferred option. And the entire time, the translator can follow the path of the transcreation. So unlike in regular translation, when you submit a string and you can't find it again, when you submit a string here, you're still able to view it. You're able to view the history. You're able to view, oh, the reviewer 3 steps down the row from me changed the preferred option. I see. Maybe I'll ask them why. And we're trying to build an extremely collaborative, creative experience inside of your standard Smartling workflow here. So this is being developed right now. We have a team working full-time on this, and we're looking to release the beta MVP by the end of September. So that means that you'll be able to use this in your Smartling workflows live on your own, be able to ask translators to give you multiple options, be able to have those types of conversations around the transcreation experience. And then what we're going to do is an iterative rollout where we continue to improve the feature. So we're working on building things like comments inside of this, where rather than just raising an issue, you can actually have a full-blown discussion or a more interactive glossary panel where you can see the history of a glossary term. Because we do know that transcreation is that sort of step in between translation and copywriting, and we do want it to be a really team effort here. But yeah, does that explain?
That's fantastic, Sophia. Thank you so much. And Franny, great work designing that product. It looks awesome. And I'm sure that others, if you like it, if you like what you just saw, throw it in the chat. But we've been together now for about an hour. So I just wanted to say a massive, massive thank you to Valerie, Anya, Gabby, and Daniel for your time today. This has been one of my favorite webinars. And thanks to everybody who joined. Your contributions here have been fantastic. I've loved seeing the chat explode. Josh had a question. If you are curious about the beta, you can send an email to beta@smartling.com. I'll throw that domain here, beta@smartling.com, and we'll help you out. But we'll also follow up with you guys by email. I've had a whale of a time. Ha ha ha. It's been great. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.